Three,
We're
two,
rock and
one.
roll.
We're good. We are on.
All right, we are. So cool. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Sustainiacs. I am one of your hosts, Michael Vincent. She's Emma Wightman. Emma, I'm calling this one Why Plastics Do Not Biodegrade and How We Can Make Them Do It. And I'm not talking about getting Chuck Norris to stare at them until they just break down, right? Which probably would work. But that might work.
Mm-hmm.
That might work. Emma, introduce yourself.
Emma Wightman, and again, co-host Michael here. We're very excited. We have a very cool guest on today. Same last name, no relation. We're talking today to Paul Wightman of ENSO Plastics. I'm so excited to have you on, Paul. It's so great to meet you and have you here with us.
Pleasure to be here. Looking forward to it. Great opportunity to have a conversation with you guys.
Yeah. So, hey, Paul, what you guys do there at ENSO is really super cool. And we'll get into all that kind of stuff in your background, which I looked up on LinkedIn, and you're like the mystery man. He just came out of nowhere. Poof, 11 years ago, he's with ENSO. So we'll try and figure out what makes you tick and where you came from, what planet you landed here from. Maybe he's an ancient alien that came back to give us this technology again. I don't know.
Don't spread rumors.
I read that on a bathroom wall somewhere. I don't know. But let's start out with this, because I think this sets up the conversation really, really well. It's from Ohio State. It's the conversation. Yale Vadovats, I would think, professor of food science and technology at the Ohio State University. They just trademarked the. Did you know that? Yeah, they did, which is kind of weird. But anyways, and we won't get into all the details here, but it's interesting because they're talking about why plastics don't biodegrade, right? And they go through all these different things, but essentially what it comes down to is because we made them really tough out of chemicals and made these polymers and compounds that nature hasn't seen. And therefore, it doesn't know how. It hasn't had the time to react and build up those enzymes and microbials, I guess, whatever it is we call it scientifically, to break those things down. Like they can break down cardboard because essentially it's wood, right? And some other things that they can just break down, or other things might be a little bit tougher, but the compounds aren't quite that tough. And therefore, that's why plastics just don't break down for 1 to 1,000 years. We think 1,000 years or whatever. We don't really actually know. I think we're guesstimating on that one because I don't think we've had plastics for 1,000 years. Have we, Paul?
No. That's a little bit incorrect, but we'll get all into all that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we will get it. I'm summarizing it and probably speaking about what a lot of laymen like myself understand about plastics and why they don't break down and that type, because this is what we're fed, right? And this is what I'm reading. Now, this gets into getting into creating those enzymes or creating a biodegradable or bioplastics, as they call it, and all that kind of stuff. And we'll get into all that kind of stuff. But what are your takes on this article? I shot it to you to give it a review. What do you think is going on here? And
it starts off with a little misleading information. Saying that plastics don't biodegrade is not true. Plastics will biodegrade. It does not take thousands of years, but it will take hundreds of years, sometimes 100 years, 200 years, 400 years. It kind of depends. All the polymers will biodegrade differently. But
okay.
It is correct that, the polymers, building large molecules, the chain, that polymer chain is just too long for microbes to really be interested in it. Microbes will find a different food source because they see that polymer chain and go, that's complicated to get into. And so they'll find something else, but eventually plastics will biodegrade. And
right. So you just got to find a micro organism that's willing to take out the hammer and break the lobster claw.
Exactly. You can see articles out there that they found a microbes that will break down PET or things of that nature.
Sure.
So they're out there. It does happen.
So is it a matter of us finding them and cultivating them type of thing, or can we produce microbes that do this? And if we did, did we do that when we got COVID?
Yeah, that would be a day. You hear about that, but that's not really the way we should go. We shouldn't be cultivating microbes.
Okay.
But we should be cultivating our plastics to work with the microbes. And that is basically what we're doing.
I got you. So Emma, we and Paul, both of you. I mean, Emma, I'm saying Emma. We talked to Bonnie Monteleone. She's of the Plastic Ocean Project out in Wilmington, right, North Carolina, I believe is where they're located. Anyways, so they have high school students, and now she's going. These students, one of them is going to NC State, et cetera. But they're studying plastics in turtle stomach enzymes and different types of plastics and all that kind of stuff. That's the type of research you're looking for, right? And how to go through this is taking plastics. How do they react with this enzyme, that enzyme, and then changing the makeup of that plastic to see if you can get something that they're going to want to eat, right?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
We're not going to be looking at the enzymes of what turtles are eating and digesting. This gets into first of all, plastics should never end up in the open environment. They should never end up in our marine system. They should never end up in unmanaged waste systems.
Cool. Okay.
So that's always the thing. But what we do is we're basically providing, it's kind of jumping a little bit forward, we're basically providing a food source for that microbe so that when that application gets discarded, it recognizes that food source and the microbes will colonize on top of that application, and then they'll excrete enzymes that break down that polymer chain to basically get to their food source, which is, they're just trying to break down that carbon.
Okay, now this is the perfect time. It's a perfect segue. I don't think you're jumping ahead at all. I think this leads us exactly to what you're doing, because I'm asking these questions. How does this work, biodegrading or creating it's biodegradable? So ENSO, this is what you guys are doing.
Yeah, we should start with ENSO, what would the elevator pitch be? So Michael and I obviously know what's going on. For those listening who don't know maybe what ENSO is, what exactly are you guys trying to do? What would be your, elevator pitch you'd give someone if they had no idea?
ENSO is an environmental technology company. We've been in the industry for, it's been around for about 13 years now. Wow. And we take a look, sort of the 30,000 foot look at what's happening and trying to figure out what's the best way to solve the issues that we have going on today. We get into a lot of different things. We get into starch-based polymers. We get into researching algae, things of that nature. But our flagship technology, which we really hang our hat on, is ENSO Restore, which is basically an additive that is used in plastics. It's used at a 1% load rate. It's an organic blend of material. It is FDA GROS. And what that does is that it makes standard plastics work in today's primary managed waste system, which is our landfills.
Okay, I got you.
Wow.
I got you.
That's cool.
So
it's not a different type of plastic. It's an additive you can add to any plastic that will make it break down within the landfills if and when it eventually reaches that landfill.
Correct. And we do every type of polymer, including rubber and latex. So anything, and it doesn't change.
So this can use in any of the 7, the 6 and then the 7, it says other, and rubber. It can be used in any of those.
Correct.
Wow.
Is rubber and latex traditionally, can those be recycled? Because I've never. No. I was going to say,
No,
okay.
they don't. And, our recycling rates right now are not good. I mean, we're capturing about 5. Yeah,
that's being very kind.
Yeah. We're capturing about less than 5, around 5% of plastic waste for recycling right now. So
yeah.
But we are sending the majority of plastic waste to anaerobically managed solid waste systems.
Correct.
And our sort of argument or discussion is that there's more return value coming out of our anaerobically managed solid waste systems, today's modern landfills, than any other option we have available today.
Interesting.
Okay, so explain anaerobic landfills, what that means. I have an idea. I've never heard it called that before, but I have an idea of what that is. It's kind of capped and we're grabbing the methane, right?
Right.
Type of
You're talking about systems that don't have any light, any oxygen in them.
right. Yeah, it's
So
like you go anaerobic when you're exercising, right? You get the lactic acid type of thing. It's the same
And
principle. You're
also,
not burning
isn't it like the anaerobic nature of landfills is the reason that most plastics don't traditionally break down, because things get so, even things that are compostable, right? Because they don't have enough air, they don't have enough sunlight.
well,
That's why things don't break down. If I'm correct.
they do break down. They do break down. Compostable requires more of a mechanical breakdown, high heat environments.
Interesting.
But in anaerobically managed landfills, they are absolutely breaking down. Biodegradation is happening all the time, all over the place. These are living, breathing systems that are highly engineered to protect the environment, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and most importantly, convert the methane that they're capturing into clean, renewable energy.
Yeah,
so,
RNG is a great fuel. It's a great fuel.
You know, and it's interesting because there's such a disconnect between the sustainable packaging industry and the energy industry. If you're talking to somebody in the energy industry and you're talking about landfill gas energy, they go, oh, there's a ton of stuff happening in landfill gas energy. In the sustainable packaging industry, they say, oh, no, we can't send anything to a landfill. We have to divert from a landfill. And that's a huge disconnect and not doing our industry any favors. There's no value in diverting that material from these highly managed systems. We just need to, the root cause of plastic pollution is that plastics don't inherently work in our managed waste systems. That's why we have plastic pollution.
Okay, so wait a minute. So it sounds like to me, just listening to what you're saying, because I don't understand every single concept that you're talking about. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Because I do understand some things that have been, and when you talk to one scientist and one research group, they think this and one thinks the other, right? So I'm not trying to disagree with anything you're saying. RNG, according to experts, and those in the space trying to create like hydrogen fuel cell cars and stuff that are relying on RNG to be the stepgap to get to clean hydrogen, because we don't have really a good way of making clean hydrogen yet, mm-hmm. right? It's not a really green process. They claim that RNG would only, if we captured all the RNG, we'd only maybe power about a third of our vehicles or a third of our trucks that are on, because there's not that much of it to sustain everything, but it's a great energy source, right?
Right.
And so these landfills are doing this. And so that, and CPG, then you talk about CPG, maybe they don't have to go crazy and say, hey, we can't go into the landfills, et cetera. It sounds like you're saying, hey, the landfills are okay.
Yeah, but it almost to me sounds like it has to be one option of many.
Okay.
Yeah, you get the conversation of, which is you get this, you get that prison of two ideas, that we talk about in this industry, right. Recycling or composting.
Right. Right.
Now you have all these companies and manufacturers that are talking about changing that polymer, changing everything to make it work in a compost that is a waste system.
Mm-hmm.
Although compostable plastics don't make compost, so there is no return value in doing that. All we're saying is, well, instead of that waste system, let's make it work in this anaerobically managed solid waste systems, landfills, and there, everything that you want to do in sustainability, all the check boxes you want in sustainability are happening because they're happening in those landfills. They're reducing greenhouse gas emissions, they're lowering carbon footprint, and they're making sure that renewable energy is happening, is being recovered. And I tell people all the time that it's such an odd thing because, we put our black bin out every week, and here comes this truck to pick this up. All of our plastic waste is in there. It comes to pick it up, And on the side of that truck, it says running on clean, renewable natural gas. That's coming from our landfills.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a banner that crosses our face every week of what's happening in that managed waste system where we're sending those plastic applications. And
Paul, is this true across the country?
It is all across the country.
That's awesome.
It is everywhere. And that's
I had no idea. I mean, it's right in front of our faces.
It is everywhere. And when I started this, years ago, we went to the Waste Management Phoenix Open. And CEO back then, Dave Sanger, I believe his name was, got in front of was given a talk in front of all the sustainability people. And he said, if you want the biggest bang for your buck environmentally, you're going to have to combine best-in-class recycling with landfill gas to energy recovery.
Agreed.
That comment went over everybody in that room's head.
Because you, like you said before, they're taught polarization. It's either this or that. You can't combine the two.
It's been decades of demonizing landfills.
Right, right.
When we hear landfill, we think, oh my God, not a landfill, because we think of them as unmanaged holes in the ground. And that could not be further from the truth.
We do. And we think of the old stuff like in Brighton, Michigan, there's a place we used to call Mount Trashmore because all they did was pile up all the garbage and cover it with land and we skied on it.
It hardly exists anymore. If a landfill gets to any size anymore, it is so heavily regulated. They have to manage that stuff. And I was actually watching a recent podcast of yours when you were talking about, we're old, I'm old enough to remember the Indian. And
on the side of the road with the tear.
Sure.
Yeah.
That was a societal problem of pollution.
Mm-hmm.
We were littering and we had to stop littering. So all the consumers, we did a really good job. We stopped littering. So consumers are properly disposing of our waste. We take a lot of great effort in making sure that, we clean up beaches. We're cleaning up all that stuff on beaches. We put them all in those plastic trash bags and we take them to a landfill. They're all going to a landfill. They're all going to these managed waste systems. And also back in the day, we had issues with landfills. Landfills were not being run properly decades ago. And since then, so much innovation has gone into how we are managing waste. It's incredible. So today you have companies like Waste Management, Republic Services, both of them are dropping over $1 billion in landfill gas energy recovery.
Sure.
A recent article just came out where BP just invested $4 billion in landfill gas energy recovery. They're all heading towards landfill gas energy recovery because it's a baseload energy resource that is powering homes, providing heat. We talk to companies all the time. I talk to companies that are literally running their manufacturing facilities on landfill gas energy recovery. And I say, well, if you want to be circular, then make sure your plastic applications work in the waste systems that are powering your manufacturing facilities.
Because that's the key that you're talking about here, right? I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea that you're saying, hey, forget about recycling, just throw it in there and everything's fine. It has to be treated in the right type of plastic. And that's what you guys are doing, is trying to make, like you say, making plastics responsible. Or responsibly.
You've got plenty of non-recyclable, single-use plastic applications where
we got them everywhere.
These producers just need to take accountability for the life cycle of that application.
Amen.
And we don't disrupt the recycling stream. We don't change the polymer. So everything stays the same. So if an application can get recycled sustainably, if there is a sustainable waste stream for recycling, great.
So what you're saying is the current. So does that cover all recycling, or just like what I would call mechanical recycling, or do we just not know yet? Right? Because there's some that are using chemicals to try and turn it back into the base elements and fuel and all this other kind of stuff.
Right.
Have you done any
No.
testing on that and how it disrupts
No,
that at all?
we're just talking mechanical
Talking
recycling.
about mechanical shredding it, putting it back into an injection molder or whatever it happens, an extruder or whatever it happens to be, right?
Right.
Gotcha.
And there you have other conversations that are happening about the, chemical recycling and things of that nature that, cloud up this argument. But what it comes down to is that that's not the way we are managing our waste today.
No, it is not. You're
20
right.
years or 30 years, we are no longer sending our stuff to anaerobically managed solid waste systems. Fine. Then we're,
Right.
then you don't have to worry about it. But right now, that is the way we are managing waste. So if you're going to do something today, it's a matter of taking care of that life cycle and having that accountability. And Emma, you brought up a good point as far as, is it everywhere? Yes, it's everywhere. Anybody that has a managed waste, company coming to their house, that waste is going to a managed landfill.
Mm-hmm. It has to be.
It's interesting because it's almost a closed loop system. I mean, obviously not, but like if you think, I've always been taught in school, I've always heard from people that, a landfill is they put a bunch of trash and they cover it with dirt. I mean, I've been in a bunch of states where you can
we got to put soda ash on top of it.
Soda cans falling out of the side of the mountains, and then you hear this and it's like, okay, well, the trucks that are collecting the garbage are the same trucks that are taking the garbage to the landfill that are making the fuel to fuel the truck. So it's almost a self-sustaining system. Of course, you have the arm that reaches in with the trash in the first place. And I think, obviously having less waste is a good thing. But I think if we know that this is where our trash is going at the end of its life cycle, and most of our recycling as well, our recycling rates, like you said, are down the toilet. We might as well find these innovative ways to get rid of the plastic that inevitably will end up where it's not supposed to be.
Agree with you. You got to keep going down all these different avenues, because if we didn't, we'd all be still on AOL. Right. Exactly. And we'd be on AOL and FaceTime or MySpace. And that wouldn't be any good.
Well, it's definitely one of those things. Like I said, it has the scale because there's three pillars to any successful sustainability strategy. You have to have these three pillars, and anything you talk about, I'll immediately bring these three things up. It has to have scale. It has to have practice. Consumers have to be doing it. Consumers properly discard waste. I don't know of anybody in my circle that litters. Yeah. Everybody properly discards waste. And then it has to have that return value. Those are the three things that have to be there for any successful sustainability strategy. And by just making, and this always seems like a very weird conversation to have, because I'm advocating for making sure plastics work in our waste systems. Mm-hmm. That's about as common sense as it gets.
I love the approach. I love the approach.
We have a plastic pollution problem, and plastics can work in our managed waste system. And I tell people all the time, it's not just about ENSO. We have the technologies out there. We have internationally recognized testing data to make sure plastics work in all of our managed waste systems, from water sewage to a compost. We've got the testing data to make sure that plastics work in these places. It's just a matter of recognizing, okay, well, where are my consumers properly discarding that plastic application? And the majority of that answer is it's going to a landfill.
Okay. Because even to your point, though, Paul, if people are practicing it correctly, and I agree with you 100%, there's issues with the plastic, because each one of those pillars, you got to dig even further, right? They branch out into all these other things, because for proper practice, it's got to be easy for the consumer to understand, and it's got to be efficient. It's got to be convenient for them to do it and stuff like that. And they have to believe in it. Their BS meters can't go off. And let's face it, Paul, our generation had very low, did not have really sensitive BS meters. They're much more sensitive with the millennials, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. And so when they hear things like we went from 6 to 9% recycling to 4 or 5%, even if you throw it in a recycling bin, they're like, what the hell am I doing? right?
Right.
I
I also
mean,
think that, like, to your point, Michael, like, I'm sitting here and I'm listening and I'm thinking, I almost wonder if this would, I mean, theoretically, the goal is to get less plastics in the ocean and in the environment. And
sure.
if you have people that, like, we talk about all the time, wish cycling, like
Yeah.
people
They don't
just
know they are, but they
throwing
are.
plastics in the trash or in the recycling because they think that it's recyclable, and it's not. Like, if we had a system where we could say it doesn't matter what it is, it will be properly disposed of at the end of its
Correct.
life, because
Correct.
the plastic's proper disposal is now being put into the landfill, and that's
Right.
actually, like, the positive thing to do. We
Right.
almost could and this is a dream world that I'm living in here, but, like, almost theoretically we could get rid of the plastic recycling and we could
Well,
actually use that for fuel, and maybe we roll that out. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
I'm sitting here
you
thinking,
gotta-
and that's one of the things I wanted to ask you, Paul, is the end mission of what you guys are doing there. I mean, is that it? Because, I mean, surely you're not advocating for, let's just keep petroleum-based plastics growing and I'll sprinkle my dust on it and it'll just biodegrade, right?
That's not necessarily what I'm saying. If
Right.
we find something that's better than that, we're not even remotely there yet. But
Right. No.
right now, it works. It works phenomenally. So
I think it's
we're not
beautiful.
getting rid of plastics, anytime soon. And to Emma's point, I'm not against recycling. It just has to be done right. First thing we should do is really focus on rigid PET and HDPE and see if we can actually get that working sustainably. Right now, we haven't done that yet. But
from what respect? From what you guys are doing, or from the respect of recycling and mechanical
from the respect
recycling?
of recycling.
Okay, I got you.
Let's recycle. Let's get that PET recycled and start doing that. Then we get into, okay, now you have all these companies that are adding recycled content in it. Well, you can't perpetually recycle plastics.
No, you can't.
You can't do that. So let's not make the same mistake twice. Let's load that application with as much recycled content as possible, and now account for the end of life of that application. Make sure that application now works in that managed waste system where it will inevitably end up. That way, we are getting rid of everything. And when you talk about circularity, here's a huge thing that just is a pet peeve of mine in the industry, is that recycling is not circular. We are not getting plastics from plastics. We get plastics from energy. So until we are recovering energy at the end of life of plastics, that's when it becomes circular. Until then, it is not. Recycling only extends the life of plastics. That's it. It's fine if we can do it sustainably and reuse that material to another level. But at some point, we have to address the end of life of plastics.
And I don't think you could have said that any better.
It's not Dow. You hear a lot about, Dow doesn't manage our waste. Waste management manages our waste. And when you talk to waste management, they get giddy excited about landfill gas energy. They're not changing their pro forma on how they're managing waste. That is where they're sticking for decades to come. So it's either, the opportunity is there to really address it, take accountability of that application. You hear it all the time. It's about life cycle. You hear about people talking about biodegradation, but biodegradation has to be managed. The reason biodegradation is valuable is because it has to be managed. We have to get that return value out of it. That's the circularity part of biodegradation. It does not help if that biodegradation is happening in a marine environment. We should never advocate for plastics going in an unmanaged unmanaged environment. It needs to go to a managed environment, and that biodegradation has to be managed for that return value. And our solid waste systems are golden for that.
It's, Paul, I don't think you could have answered that question any clearer or any better. That's a rat. Let's put that one in a can and get it out there. That was I loved it. And no, it really was. It really was excellent.
Yeah.
And I get it. And one of the points that you brought up is really important. I think that people need to understand is that applications and the technology that you guys, that you, Paul, and I've talked with Cole, unfortunately couldn't be on, at ENSO are doing is important, because one, it makes money. It's a sustainable business, right? You don't have, it works. Waste management giddy over the renewable natural gas coming off of their landfills, managed landfills. People go, oh yeah, that's just another way to make money. Well, thank God, because then it'll keep going, right? Then it's money. And of course they are. We're paying them to give them the raw materials for them to then convert it into renewable natural gas to then sell again. It's beautiful. I'd be giddy too. I'd be popping champagne corks if I were them. And God bless them. I don't fault them for it at all. It's beautiful that it works that way because it incents people to be green. And that's the problem. To be green and to be sustainable, we need to figure out ways like you guys are doing at ENSO.
Right.
To do it and make money, then people are going to invest.
And what they're doing at waste management. It's not just about, like you said, it's not just about ENSO. It's just about, it's about what they're doing at waste management. Amen. Waste management promotes itself as one of the greenest companies in our country right now. And then when you say, okay, well, guys, how are you being so green? They'll say, we got the recycling thing going on, but it's landfill gas energy. We're losing our shirt on recycling right now, but we're making it up on landfill gas energy. And it's like, well, let's start connecting those dots, guys. Let's start, taking accountability of the life cycle of those applications and start saying, and instead of just getting in the weeds with biodegradation, because that word is such a general term that nobody understands.
No, that's why I asked you about it. I'm like, what the heck does this mean? Does it mean?
And you also brought up a good thing, a point, about consumers not understanding it. Consumers already know to discard their applications. I tell people all the time, they say, well, how do we message this to a consumer? Well, put on that application that, please discard properly. Do not litter. This application is designed for renewable energy recovery. I don't care what that consumer is going to do with that application. It's going, as long as they discard it properly, whether they try to cycle it into the recycling facility or they properly dispose it into a solid waste system, it's going to end up in the right system. And so, all that return value is measurable for companies to say, okay, all of our applications, here's one that gets to me. Let's start with low-hanging fruit. Let's start with a company like Reynolds Consumer Products.
Okay.
And a hefty bag.
Reynolds wrapped. Hefty. What a hefty bag is that? That's Clorox, isn't it? Clorox.
Clorox has another one. Clorox is
Glad. That's Glad.
So you've got these companies that have an army of sustainability people, and you're telling me that they can make those bags smell like roses.
Yes.
Make them super strong, put in zip ties on them, all these things that they do for those bags. But you're telling me that nobody in those facilities are talking about, hey, let's just make sure that this single-use application, that sole purpose is to be discarded into a modern landfill, works in a landfill?
Okay. I mean, especially the
you make a great point, Paul. I don't know how to argue with that.
And it's measurable.
Especially the plastic.
I did this really quick on this subject, and it's measurable. So if you took 1 million pounds of polyethylene, which they do in a blink of an eye when making trash. You're talking about an energy value of over $160,000. That would power over 118 homes for an entire year.
Wow.
Would be worth about 665 barrels of oil, over 31,000 gallons of gasoline, and over 253,000 pounds of coal. It has an energy value of over 1.2 million kilowatts of energy. Wow. If they would just make their plastic bags work in the environment that they are intended to go in.
Okay, now I understand if they only. Are you suggesting that if they put your Renew product in there, that would do that?
It's Restore.
Your Restore product. I'm sorry, Renew is the accelerant, I think, or something like that, right?
Yeah,
Restore. The Restore.
Renew is a starch-based thermopolymer. That's starch-based. That's not.
So Restore. If they utilize Restore in the manufacturing of those bags, that would make that happen. Is that what we're saying?
If they make sure that their plastic bags met ASTM D5526 testing standards, which is
Whoa.
absolutely common known out there for them. ASTM D5526 or ASTM D5511, anybody in sustainability in those groups know exactly what I'm talking about. They would be accountable for all their plastic bags getting converted into renewable energy.
Wow.
Instead, they hook up with Dow and give you an orange bag and call it the energy bag. And that gets sent to some incineration plant that powers some cement facility in Omaha. Okay,
Yeah.
now we go back to the scale, practice, and return value. And these companies, Walmart has an entire aisle of plastic bags that are all meant to go to a landfill. Can you imagine? And the other thing that this is kind of getting into
hold on. What is the standard that you said? What were those initials?
ASTM standards. So that you're talking about internationally recognized testing standards, ASTM. And for like a compost, they always mention D6400. For a landfill, it's ASTM D5526. Or for an anaerobic digester, it's ASTM D5511.
Standards that you just went off, the composting, the landfill, and the anaerobic, and that type of these standards. The reason I asked for what those were is because, one, I want to look them up because I've never heard of those before, and I should know those, so I want to learn them. But the other thing is it sounds to me that you're saying that if Dow and Reynolds followed these standards, then there would not be any issue with these plastic bags recycling. You just throw them in the thing and they just biodegrade. Is that right?
If somebody at Clorox or Reynolds, if you're in sustainability, you have to look again at 30,000 foot view and go, okay, we're making all these applications. Mm-hmm. Where are all these applications going? They're going to a landfill. Okay, what's happening in those landfills? There's a lot happening in those landfills. And I tell people all the time, just for a little while, become a fan of landfill gas to energy. Put it in your Google search. Start looking for it. Look up on YouTube how we manage landfill gas to energy right now. You'll find videos, those videos that, Emma, you were talking about where you see trash all over the place, that hardly exists anymore. That's not the way landfills are managed. They are very pristine places. So, and it's a matter of going, okay, since our plastic waste is going there, what is there something we can do? Well, yes, there's internationally recognized testing standards. So there's technologies out there to make sure that those plastics work in those environments. That should be the role of anybody in sustainable plastics right now. Anybody. But now you're not finding that. You're finding a lot of verbal gymnastics going on in sustainability about, things that might happen in the future, or we're going to make it recycle ready and things like that. And you're going, you guys, all you got to do is take accountability of that life cycle. And then you're checking off all the boxes that you need to do.
So my question is, why aren't these bio-friendly, I don't know how we should refer to them, why aren't these plastics everywhere? Is it the hesitancy of people, like you said, to your point, is it the hesitancy of people who are sustainably minded from saying, okay, I'm okay with letting things go to the landfill? Or is it like this still desire to cash in on recycling? Like why aren't these plastics all over,
There's probably a few reasons for that. One, but I've been doing this for over a decade. So I've had conversations with every company you can think of. Mm-hmm. I've talked to all the sustainability directors. They know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's not like I have no idea what you're saying to me. Your words are confusing. They know. So, it's sort of the messaging. We can't let anything go to a landfill, which, is crazy because we are going to send plastics to a landfill.
Sure.
Not knowing the value that's coming out of our landfills, which is crazy because billions of dollars of private equity is being invested in these companies, not subsidized.
Sure.
It's private equity is going into these in the billions of dollars. And then, of course, you have regulations. You've got states like California that have their new regulations coming up where you need to make your plastics recyclable or compostable, or they're going to charge you out the yin yang for those. So these companies are going, well, I've got to figure out how to make this bag that's absolutely not going to go into a recycling facility recyclable. And they're jumping through the hoops to do that, even though I can have a conversation with them and they go, I completely understand what you're saying. I know you're right, just like you guys are doing right now, but I've got to appease California or else I'm going to get penalized for not jumping through those hoops.
Follow the dollar.
Yeah.
It's almost like putting the law first and then doing the research to back. Like Michael and I talk about this all the time. It's like we rush to say we got to ban this. And
yeah, these companies are going to get charged a lot of money for their applications that are single use, aren't going to get recycled. Yeah. They're going to pay that penance, and at the end of the day, I'm skeptical. I don't think that that's really going to move the needle on it. I mean, you have all these countries that are shutting down recycling. You've got, China did the China sword. You've got Thailand just did it. You've got all these Asian companies that have shut down recycling and said, no more, you guys are destroying our environment. We cannot do it. So they're shutting it all down. And then you've got people that are going, well, we're going to pick it up here in the United States and do it here. Are we? It's going to cost us a lot more than it is in those other countries. And with the regulations and stuff, it's really going to throw things out of whack. Again, I'm not against recycling. It just has to be done right. And for the last few decades, we have not been doing it right. I would make the argument, that our ocean plastics have come from our recycling industry.
Yeah, that's probably true. I agree with you. I agree with everything you're saying there, Paul. To paint a picture on this, because I want to ask you a couple more specific questions before we have to end this. And this has been awesome. We're going to have you on again if you're willing to, because this is really good. This is really, really good stuff. No. It's really awesome. So basically, the perfect world would be. Not the perfect world, but I mean, a good situation environment or circular environment, if you want to call it that, would be that all of the plastics are compostable or can go into the landfills and work in the anaerobic facilities and create the RNG, right? When they get disposed into there.
Right.
Along with a recycling program that is properly run, properly managed, efficient, of those exact same plastics, so that if they don't get recycled, or when they come to their natural end of life, because you can only recycle so many times.
Right.
Now we know that they're actually going to go in there, and we're still going to get some value out of them in that waste. That's is that a bow? Is that a nice good bow on it?
Absolutely. Okay. Right now, like I said, if we can take our PET bottles and we can recycle those and get those back in the system, great. But for our chip bags, we're not getting rid of chip bags. And
foils are a little more difficult.
There's no recycling facility that wants a chip bag. There's no secondary market for that.
Correct.
So, and they've done a fantastic job. They say single use, which is crazy. Single use application like a potato chip bag. Well, that potato chip bag has done an amazing job. Those potato chips are as fresh as the day they were made. They sit on the store shelves for months, even years. That potato chip bag has done a great job, but now it's done. And now when it goes into our managed waste systems, let's make sure we get that highest return value in that system.
Agreed. I want to ask you a couple of specifics about what you guys are doing. So the Restore product, this can be put into, and it can be used in any plastics. Is that right? I mean, PVC pipes, drainage, all that stuff, plastic foil bags, all that kind of stuff. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Does there need to be a specific amount in them? And does it make any difference to the strength, the rigidity, the confidence level in that plastic? So, I mean, it could be used like in the plastics for, say, a playground.
Yes.
Or what about like medical waste? Is it sterile?
Yes, it does. We do have applications that have 510K medical
Cool.
compliance. So it is used in the medical industry. It's used at generally at a 1% load rate. So you're just using a very small amount of material.
Like a 1 to 99 ratio,
Right.
basically.
So you're just
Yeah.
using a 1% load rate, just like a colorant would. So you're putting it in a
Oh,
feeder, just like a colorant goes in there. Nothing changes. No changes in performance. No changes in processing. No different equipment. Everything stays exactly the same.
so
So
let
it
me
is a
so let me
drop-in
ask you this.
technology.
So let me ask you this, and I don't question your motivation because I agree with you 100%. Discard of your, as you call them, applications, which is a great word. I'm going to start using that more often because it makes more sense. Dispose them properly. They get into the managed landfills and they turn into energy. We get that value back. It's tremendous. I love it. When it doesn't happen, do they still biodegrade using your product? Does it still say I throw one off the boat because I've lost my mind or I'm drunk or
Right.
whatever it happens to be, blows off my boat into the Gulf of Mexico. Is that going to biodegrade in the ocean? And I shouldn't go, oh
As
crap,
an
I just killed it.
environmental company, we really stay away from that conversation because that should
Okay,
never happen.
I
But
agree.
yes, it will. When you talk about a marine environment, um, you're talking about having enough microbes to break down that application. And when you throw something into the ocean, are there microbes there? Yes. Are they in the amount that we need for that plastic to break down? I don't know. Some days
Yeah.
it will be, some days it won't.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. I'm not trying to trick you. I don't
yeah,
want you to condone that, and we're not condoning
yeah,
that. Anybody who's watching this at all, neither is Enzo. Paul is not. Emma's not. No,
yeah,
do
no.
not
We,
do it.
we stay
I'm just
away from that.
asking. Yeah.
Environmental company, we stay away from that. Every now and then, though, we do get an application that does get discarded in the open environment, and the company would say, okay, I get what you're saying, but our application does get discarded in the open environment. What's going to happen to that? Again, we turn to the ASTM testing standards and go, okay, well, that's a 5988 because your application is going to get discarded into the aerobic soil. So just the
Okay.
open environment. So
Gotcha.
let's test it under that and see what happens. So they will get their biodegradation rates on what that happens. So for instance, we deal with a company that produces shotgun wad shells.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So when those shotgun wad shells go into the environment, they wanted to know, well, what's that biodegradation happening in that open environment? So we'll see that. We'll do that. But again, our big push is that biodegradation, and this is really something that I just want to drive home with the entire industry because you hear about biodegradation in all kinds of places, but biodegradation has to be managed. That is the whole point of circularity, is to ensure that return value, and we can get that when that happens in our managed waste system. So whether you see beach cleanups and all that stuff, or somebody even picking up those shotgun shells off the ground and they're putting them into, the trash, we want to make sure that it is now going away, that ends pollution, that the greenhouse gas emissions are going to get reduced, carbon footprint's going to get lowered. We even talk about, people say, well, we have to get rid of landfills. Well, if you want to change the way landfills are, let's start making plastics work in a landfill. Because now you're talking about landfill airspace, which gets on a whole different subject, which is
Yeah.
very valuable. So when you
Yeah.
think about all the polystyrene that goes into a landfill and how much airspace polystyrene takes up, well, let's make sure that polystyrene works in a landfill. So that landfill airspace is condensed, and we're making our landfills smaller and smaller. We're not using them as storage facilities because we're not going back in and mining plastics. That's not the way landfills are working. These are active environments. So those plastics are already biodegrading, but it's going to take hundreds of years long after that landfill is managing those gases. We
Yeah.
want to make sure biodegradation is happening within 2 years to 50 years.
So do those
Biodegradation is most important.
right? Let me ask you one last. So does the biodegrade? So the plastics with your application on it, with your restore application on it, that are degrading, right? Does that biodegradation enhance that RNG, or does it just make sure that the plastic goes away? What is left when they're
It's
gone?
what's left is you're talking about the gases. You're talking about humus, so soil and water are the three elements of any carbon-based material that's biodegrading in a landfill. Those are the three elements you're going to get at the end of the day. And so we're making sure that plastics are just biodegrading back into those three elements: humus, gas, and water. And those gases are then managed and converted into renewable energy.
Gotcha. Excellent stuff. So, Paul, we're got to have you on again. I hope you enjoyed your time here.
Oh, it's a fun conversation. Obviously, I love to have this conversation,
yeah.
so I'm passionate about it.
No, and I'd love to have you on again and just dissect another news article or something like that, because I love your point of view. You're very matter of fact, obviously very knowledgeable. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in a position you are. Paul, how do people reach out to you and learn more about you or ENSO and get involved?
Just reach out to ENSO Plastics, and you'll connect with myself or somebody at ENSO. You can reach out to ENSO sales at ensoplastics.com. Will direct your inquiry to us. And, we love to have this conversation. Like I said, we don't, we're just trying to do the right thing as an environmental company. We want to spread the message. We want to have people having a better conversation about managing plastics. And, like I said, it's always interesting to dive into this. And I think you guys, would agree that, once you start doing this and have this conversation, you're going to look at that black bin a totally different way. So when you see waste management coming up to pick up that black bin, you're going to go, oh yeah, I can see that. And when you're loading up your trash bag and putting all your single-use, non-recyclable plastic applications in them, it changes, and it's changing that, cognitive dissonance that we have, and changing that and going, hey, let's stop demonizing those landfills and let's start working with them.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing, and that's the purpose of the show, the Sustainiacs, is to get people to understand both sides of what is going on here, and all the different applications or all the different technologies and processes that are trying to bring together solutions. And we need to work together. We can't just, throwing blood on people for is not going to work, right? That's not going to get it done. We got to work together. Absolutely beautiful. If you guys out there have suggestions or questions or concerns, or just want to tell Emma how great she is, or how great I am, or how great Paul is, hit us up at the Sustainiacs at gmail.com, and look up the Sustainiacs anywhere: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm Michael Vincent on LinkedIn. Paul Wightman is on LinkedIn too. And he's got a lot of great posts, and you should check his stuff out. Emma, where are they finding you at?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can also find me at Emma_Sustainiacs on Instagram. Let me know if you guys have any questions for Paul. We can get them to him, or we can try and have him on another episode. So if you're sitting there and you're like anxious to say something, or you have any comments or thoughts, bring him on, and we'll send him over. And
let's have a conversation.
Yeah, we'll get it going. Paul, awesome stuff. Thank you so much. We're definitely going to have you on again. Everybody out there, peace and love. We'll see you next time.
All right.